Welcome back to Biography Central. Did you know that one of Ramana Maharshi's most devoted disciples, Ganapati Sastri, was not only a brilliant scholar, but also a seeker who traversed the path of self-knowledge through profound realizations? In today's episode, we delve into the life of Ganapati Sastri, a man of extraordinary intellect and deep spiritual longing. Born in 1878, he was destined for greatness but found himself caught between ambition and spiritual aspiration. Witness how his quest for truth led him to the feet of Ramana Maharshi, where he sought enlightenment and discovered the essence of tapas, true self-discipline and surrender. As we unfold his inspiring story, you'll see how Ganapati Sastri not only became a pivotal figure in the Maharshi's circle, but also a beacon of spiritual wisdom for generations to come. Ganapati Sastri. Altogether outstanding among the devotees was Ganapati Sastri, known also as Ganapati Muni, that is, the sage Ganapati, and given the honorific title of Kavyakanta, one who has poetry in his throat, that is, an extempore poet, for his preeminence in Sanskrit extempore verse disputation. He was a man of towering ability that would have placed him in the very forefront of modern writers and scholars had he had the ambition, and that would have made him a great spiritual master had he totally lacked ambition, but he fell between the two. Too much turned to God to seek success or fame. He was nevertheless too anxious to aid and uplift mankind to escape from the I am the doer illusion. At the time of his birth in 1878, 1 year before that of Sri Bhagwan, his father was at Benares before an image of the god Ganapati and beheld a vision of a child running up to him from the god. Therefore, he named his child Ganapati. For the first 5 years of his life, Ganapati was dumb and subject to epileptic fits and seemed anything but a promising child. Then he was cured, it seems, by branding with a red-hot iron, and immediately began to display his marvelous ability. By the age of 10, he had written Sanskrit verse and prepared an astrological almanac besides mastering several kavyas, Sanskrit works, and grammars. At 14, he had mastered the Panchakavyas and the chief books on Sanskrit prosody and rhetoric, read the Ramayana and Mahabharata, and some of the Puranas. He could already speak and write fluent Sanskrit. Like Sri Bhagwan, he had a phenomenal memory. Whatever he read or heard, he remembered, and again, like Sri Bhagwan, he had the ability of Ashtavadana, that is, of giving his attention to a number of different things at the same time. The stories of the ancient rishis fired him with emulation, and from the age of 18, shortly after his marriage, he began traveling about India, visiting sacred places, repeating mantras, sacred phrases, and performing tapas, asceticism. In 1900, he attended a meeting of Sanskrit pundits at Nadia in Bengal, where his extraordinary facility in impromptu versification and brilliant philosophic disputation won him the title of Kavyakanta already referred to. In 1903, he came to Thiruvannamalai and twice visited the Brahmana Swami on the hill. For a while, he took a job as school teacher in Vellore, a few hours railway journey from Thiruvannamalai, and there he gathered round him a group of disciples who were to develop their sakti, power or energy, by the use of mantras to such an extent that the subtle influence would permeate and uplift the whole nation, if not all mankind. The life of a teacher could not hold him for long. By 1907, he was back again in Thiruvannamalai. But by now, doubts began to oppress him. He was approaching middle age, and with all his brilliance and vast learning and all his mantras and tapas, he had not attained success, as yet either with God or the world. He felt that he had come to a dead end. On the 9th day of the Kartikai festival, he suddenly remembered the Swami on the hill. Surely he must have the answer. As soon as the impulse came, he acted on it. In the heat of the afternoon sun, he climbed the hill to Virupaksh cave. The Swami was sitting alone on the veranda of the cave. Sastri fell on his face before him and clasped his feet with outstretched hands. In a voice quivering with emotion, he said, "All that has to be read I have read. Even Vedanta Sastra I have fully understood. I have performed japa, invocation, to my heart's content, yet have I not up to this time understood what tapas is. Therefore I have sought refuge at your feet. Pray enlighten me as to the nature of tapas." The Swami turned a silent gaze upon him for some 15 minutes and then replied, "If one watches whence the notion I arises, the mind is absorbed into that, that is tapas. When a mantra is repeated, if one watches the source from which the mantra sound is produced, the mind is absorbed in that. That is tapas. It was not so much the words spoken that filled him with joy as the grace radiating from the Swami. With the exuberant vitality that he put into everything, he wrote to friends of the Upadesha he had received and began composing praises of the Swami in Sanskrit verse. He learned from Palaniswami that the Swami's name had been Venkataramana and declared that henceforth he must be known as Bhagwan Sri Ramana and as the Maharshi. The name Ramana immediately came into use. So also did the title Maharishi, the great Rishi. It long remained customary to refer to him in speech and writing as the Maharshi. However, the practice gradually prevailed among the devotees of addressing him in the third person as Bhagwan, which means the divine or simply God. He himself usually spoke impersonally, avoiding the use of the word I. For instance, he did not actually say, "I did not know when the sun rose or when it set," as quoted in chapter 5, but who knew when the sun rose or when it set? Sometimes also he referred to his body as this. Only in making a statement in which the word God would be appropriate did he say Bhagwan and speak in the third person. For instance, when my daughter was going back to school and he was asked to remember her while she was away, the reply was, "If Kitty remembers Bhagwan, Bhagwan will remember Kitty." Ganapati Sastri also liked to refer to Sri Bhagwan as a manifestation of Lord Subramanya. However, in this the devotees rightly refused to follow him, feeling that to regard Sri Bhagwan as a manifestation of any one divine aspect was to attempt to limit the illimitable. Nor did Sri Bhagwan countenance the identification. A visitor once said to him, "If Bhagwan is an avatar of Subramanya, as some people say, why does he not tell us so openly instead of leaving us to guess?" And he replied, "What is an avatar? An avatar is only a manifestation of one aspect of God, whereas a jnani is God himself." About a year after his meeting with Sri Bhagwan, Ganapati Sastri experienced a remarkable outflow of his grace. While he was sitting in meditation in the temple of Ganapati at Thiruvothiyur, he felt distracted and longed intensely for the presence and guidance of Sri Bhagwan. At that moment, Sri Bhagwan entered the temple. Ganapati Sastri prostrated himself before him, and as he was about to rise, he felt Sri Bhagwan's hand upon his head and a terrifically vital force coursing through his body from the touch, so that he also received grace by touch from the Master. Speaking about this incident in later years, Sri Bhagwan said, "One day, some years ago, I was lying down and awake when I distinctly felt my body rise higher and higher. I could see the physical objects below growing smaller and smaller until they disappeared, and all around me was a limitless expanse of dazzling light. After some time, I felt the body slowly descend, and the physical objects below began to appear. I was so fully aware of this incident that I finally concluded that it must be by such means that siddhas, sages with powers, travel over vast distances in a short time and appear and disappear in such a mysterious manner. While the body thus descended to the ground, it occurred to me that I was at Thiruvothiyur, though I had never seen the place before. I found myself on a high road and walked along it. At some distance from the roadside was a temple of Ganapati, and I entered it. This incident is very characteristic of Sri Bhagwan. It is characteristic that the distress or devotion of one of his people should call forth an involuntary response and intervention in a form that can only be called miraculous. And it is also characteristic that Sri Bhagwan, with all powers at his feet, should be no more interested to use powers of the subtle than of the physical world. And when some such thing happened in response to the appeal of a devotee, should say, with the simplicity of a child, "I suppose that is what siddhas do." It was just this indifference that Ganapati Sastri failed to attain. He asked once, "Is seeking the source of the I thought sufficient for the attainment of all my aims, or is mantra dhyana, incantation, needed?" Always the same. His aims, his ambitions, the regeneration of the country, the revitalization of religion. Sri Bhagwan replied curtly, "The former will suffice." And when Sastri continued about his aims and ideals, he added, It will be better if you throw the entire burden on the Lord. He will carry all the burdens, and you will be free from them. He will do his part. In 1917, Ganapati Sastri and other devotees put a number of questions to Sri Bhagavan, and the questions and answers have been recorded in a book entitled Sri Ramana Gita, more erudite and doctrinal than most of the books. Characteristically, one of the questions that Ganapati Sastri asked was whether someone who attained jnana, self-realization, as it were, by the way, while seeking some specific powers, would find his original desires fulfilled. And nowhere is Sri Bhagavan's swift and subtle humor better illustrated than in the reply he gave. If the yogi, though starting upon yoga for the fulfillment of his desires, gained knowledge in the meantime, he would not be unduly elated even though his desires were likewise fulfilled. About 1934, Ganapati Sastri settled down in the village of Nimpura near Kudgapur with a group of followers, and from then until his death, some 2 years later, devoted himself wholly to tapas, asceticism. Sri Bhagavan was asked once, after Shastri's death, whether he could have attained realization during this life, and he replied, "How could he? His son Kulpas, inherent tendencies were too strong." In this episode, we discuss the life and teachings of Ramana Maharshi, emphasizing the significance of self-inquiry in the quest for truth. If you're intrigued by how one man's journey into the heart of spirituality shaped his understanding of the world, don't miss our next episode, where we explore the story of F.H. Humphreys, the first Western devotee of Sri Ramana. Discover how his experiences with the Maharshi not only changed his life, but also revealed profound truths about the nature of existence. Tune in to learn more about the transformative power of seeking knowledge from a master. Thank you for listening till the end. Please subscribe, turn on the notifications, like, comment, and share with your friends. This will help more listeners to discover our channel and content.